¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? No, no, no quiero más.
Inside an isolated maximum security prison in Colombia, there is a man named Luis Garavito, living separately from the other prisoners for his own protection. Garavito only takes food and drinks given to him by those he knows. His guards describe him as relaxed, positive, and respectful. He's studying to be a politician, and upon his release, he hopes to start a career in activism, helping abused children. After all, abused children are something Garavito is an expert on, having abused 300 of them himself. From 1992 to 1999, Luis Garavito, known as La Bista or the Beast, raped, tortured, and murdered anywhere from 100 to 400 boys, all between the ages of 6 and 16. His official number of victims rests at 138, which is the number he confessed to in court, but police believe the number is closer to 400 and continue to this day to attempt to prove it. Okay, just before we go on with the video, 98% of you guys watching this video are not subscribed, so help me continue to make more content like this by hitting that sub button. Okay, I'm done e-begging, let's continue. Before becoming an abuser himself, Luis Garavito suffered a violent childhood. Born on January 25, 1957 in Genova, Colombia. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, I am not Colombian. Garavito was the oldest of 7 brothers, all of whom he claimed were physically and emotionally abused by their father. At 16, Garavito left home and held a number of odd jobs throughout Colombia. He worked as a store clerk and for a time selling prayer cards and religious icons on the street. He reportedly developed an addiction to alcohol and was known for his temper. Police reports stated that he had once tried to kill himself and consequently spent 5 years in psychiatric care. Meanwhile, a decades-long civil war raged in Colombia that had begun in the late 60s and left thousands of citizens homeless, fending for themselves on the street. Many of those left homeless were children, their parents either dead or long gone, ensuring that no one would notice if they went missing. Luis Garavito would use this to his advantage in 1992 when he committed his first murder. The geographic span of Garavito's crime was enormous. He preyed on potentially hundreds of boys in 50 Colombian towns. Careful about his crimes, Garavito specifically targeted the downtrodden, the homeless, and orphaned boys who roamed the streets looking for food or safety. Once he found one, he would approach and lure them away from the crowded city streets by promising them gifts or candy, money, or employment. And Garavito would dress the part when offering a job, impersonating a priest, a farmer, an elderly man, or a street vendor looking for someone young to help around his house or business. He would rotate his disguise often, never appearing as the same person too often to avoid suspicion. Once he lured the boy away, he would walk with him for a time, encouraging the boy to share with Garavito about his life to earn his trust. In reality, he was wearing the boys down, walking just long enough that they would tire, making them vulnerable and unwary. Then he would attack. Luis Garavito would corner the tired victims and bind their wrists together, then he would torture them beyond belief. According to police reports, the Beast truly earned his nickname. The bodies of the victims were recovered showed signs of prolonged torture, including bite marks and rectum penetration. In multiple cases, the victims' genitals were either removed and placed in their mouth. Several of the bodies were decapitated, but it wouldn't be until 5 years after the Bista murdered his first victim that the police began to take notice of the missing children. In late 1997, a mass grave was accidentally discovered in Pereira. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, I am not Colombian. Promoting police to launch an investigation. The scene of some 25 corpses was so gruesome that police initially suspected a satanic cult was behind it. Then in February of 1998, the bodies of 2 naked children were found on a hillside in Pereira, lying next to each other. A few feet away, another corpse was found. All 3 had their hands bound and their throats slashed. The murder weapon was found nearby. While searching the area around the 3 boys, police came across a note with an address handwritten on it. The address turned out to be Luis Garavito's girlfriend, whom he had been dating for years. Though he wasn't in the home at the time, his things were, and the girlfriend gave the police access to them. In one of Garavito's bags, police discovered pictures of young boys, detailed journal entries in which he described each of his crimes, and tally marks of his victims. A search for Garavito continued for days, during which known residences of his were searched, as well as local areas where he was known to hang out to look for new victims. Unfortunately, none of the search efforts turned up any information on Garavito's whereabouts, that is, until April 22nd. Roughly a week after the hunt of Garavito had begun, police in a neighboring town picked up a man on a suspicion of rape. Earlier, a young man sitting in the alleyway had noticed a young boy being followed and eventually accosted by an older man. Thinking that the situation was dire enough to intervene, the man rescued the boy and alerted authorities. The police arrested the man on a suspicion of attempted murder and booked him. Little did they know they had in their custody one of the world's deadliest killers. As soon as he was interrogated by Colombian National Police, the beast cracked down under the pressure. He confessed to abusing 147 young boys and burying their bodies in unmarked graves. He even drew maps to the grave sites for police. His stories were corroborated when police found a pair of eyeglasses at one of the crime scenes that matched Garavito's highly specific description. In the end, he was convicted on 138 counts of murder, though his other confessions continue to be investigated. The maximum penalty for murder in Colombia is roughly 13 years. Multiplied by 138 counts he received, Luis Garavito's sentence came out to be 1,853 years and 9 days. Colombian law states that people who have committed crimes against children are required to serve at least 60 years in prison. However, because he helped police find the victims' bodies, Luis Garavito was given 22 years. In 2021, he made a very public plea for his release, saying he has been a model inmate and is living in fear of being killed by other inmates. However, a judge denied the request because he had not paid a fine for his victims that roughly totaled $41,500. The beast remains behind bars and is currently up for parole in 2023. Okay, I'm sure most of us have heard of nature versus nurture. If you haven't, this is a very basic explanation. Does a murderer become a murderer because of the way they grew up? Or are they naturally aggressive, which led them to murder? And I honestly think this is one of those cases where nurture played a big part in Luis's life. At a young age, he was abused, so all he knew was abuse. Then he grew up and became an adult and thought that he should abuse children because he was abused. Obviously, I have no evidence of this other than pure speculation, and in no way, shape, or form am I defending this guy or making excuses for him, because there is nothing that can excuse what he did. With most of the serial killers we have talked about so far, it seems like having a bad childhood is usually the root cause or the start of their downfall, which is something just sad, not only because they end up as murderers or criminals, but because I never want to see a child get abused or mistreated. But again, that's probably a nurture thing, where their parents were abused, so they just carried that down. Alright guys, this brings us to the end of the video. If you like this sort of content, please leave a like and sub to the channel, would mean the world to me. Alright, peace.